Jazz. The day I was fired should have been the worst day of my life. At least, that's what everyone in the office believed. When people lose a job, Jazz, they usually leave with tears in their eyes or anger in their hearts. Some beg for another chance. Others slam the door behind them. I did none of those things. I simply stood there, Jazz, holding a small cardboard box with a few things I kept on my desk. A family photo, an old notebook, a coffee mug with a tiny crack on the handle, and a faded blue pen my father had given me years ago. Jazz. The office was silent. Dozens of eyes followed me. Some people looked sorry. Others looked relieved that it wasn't them. A few even smiled. They thought they were watching the end of my story. Jazz. They had no idea they were about to witness the beginning. My name is Emma Carter. For 15 years I worked at Carter Global Industries. Every morning, I arrived before sunrise. Jazz. I greeted the security guards by name. I helped the cleaning staff carry heavy boxes when nobody else noticed. I remembered birthdays. I stayed late whenever another department needed help. Jazz. People often asked why I worked so hard for a company that paid me an average salary. I always smiled and said the same thing. Because this place means more to me than money. Jazz. No one ever asked what I meant. Maybe they thought I was simply loyal. Maybe they believed I loved my job. The truth was much deeper than that. But I had promised someone I would never reveal it. Jazz. Not yet. 3 months earlier, everything had changed. Our longtime CEO retired after nearly 30 years. Jazz. The company announced that a famous young billionaire named Adrian Blake had purchased the controlling management rights and would become our new chief executive. The business news called him a genius. Jazz. Social media called him a visionary. Financial magazines described him as the man who could make any company worth twice as much within a year. Everyone in the office was excited. Everyone except me. Jazz. Because I remembered something my father used to tell me. Never trust a person simply because they are successful. Watch how they treat people who can do nothing for them. At the time, Jazz, I didn't fully understand those words. Soon I would. Adrian's first day looked more like a movie than a normal business morning. 5 black luxury cars stopped outside the headquarters. Jazz. Bodyguards stepped out first, then assistants, then photographers, finally Adrian himself. He was tall, perfectly dressed, confident. Jazz. The kind of confidence that filled an entire room before he even spoke. Employees rushed toward the windows. He's younger than I expected. They say he owns houses in 6 countries. Jazz. I heard he never accepts failure. People whispered with admiration. I stayed at my desk. Because I wasn't interested in how expensive his suit looked. I was interested in the way he looked at people. Jazz. It didn't take long to find out. Within his first hour, he called every department manager into the conference room. Even though I wasn't a manager, I was asked to bring reports and stay to take notes. Jazz. The meeting lasted almost 2 hours. Not once did Adrian thank anyone for their years of service. Instead, Jazz. He walked around the room studying faces, as if he were choosing furniture instead of leading people. This company has become comfortable, he finally said. Comfort creates weakness. Nobody answered. Jazz. He continued. I don't care how long you've worked here. I don't care how loyal you've been. I only care about results. The room became even quieter. One manager carefully raised his hand. Sir, Jazz. Many employees have been here for over 20 years. Adrian looked directly at him. And that's supposed to impress me. No one spoke again. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere completely changed. Jazz. People stopped laughing during lunch. The break room became quiet. Every morning, someone wondered whether they would still have a job by evening. Jazz. Several experienced employees disappeared without explanation. One accountant who had worked there for 26 years packed his desk in less than 10 minutes. Jazz. A receptionist who knew every client by name was replaced by someone with no experience but a more impressive resume. Fear spread through every floor. Whenever Adrian walked by, Jazz, conversations ended instantly. It felt as though the building itself was holding its breath. Despite everything, I continued working exactly as I always had. If someone needed help, I helped. Jazz. If a customer had a problem, I solved it. If a new employee looked nervous, I encouraged them. One afternoon, the janitor accidentally dropped a bucket of water across the lobby. Jazz. People walked around him without stopping. I grabbed paper towels and knelt beside him. Together we cleaned the floor. "You don't have to help me," he said quietly. I smiled. "We're on the same team, Jazz." He nodded with grateful eyes. I didn't notice Adrian standing across the lobby watching us. The next morning I received an email, CO's office. "Please report immediately." No explanation, no subject. Jazz. Just those words. My co-workers noticed the message on my screen. One of them whispered, "Do you think you're getting promoted?" Another shook his head. Nobody smiles after getting an email like that. Jazz. I laughed softly. It's probably nothing. But deep inside, I knew something was wrong. Adrian's office overlooked the entire city. The walls were covered with glass. Everything inside looked expensive. Jazz. Everything except the expression on his face. He didn't invite me to sit down. Instead, he continued reading a file. After nearly a minute, he finally looked up. "So, you're Emma Carter?" "Yes." "Jazz. You've worked here 15 years. "Yes." "Interesting." He closed the folder. "I've reviewed your position." I waited quietly. "I don't think this company needs someone like you." For a moment, Jazz, I thought I had misunderstood. "I'm sorry?" He leaned back in his chair. "You spend too much time helping people. You stay involved in issues outside your department. Your performance is average, Jazz. Your leadership isn't measurable. You don't fit the culture I'm creating." Every word landed like a stone. I wanted to explain, Jazz. I wanted to tell him that helping people was exactly why the company had survived difficult years. Instead, I simply asked, "So, you're firing me?" "Effective immediately, Jazz." The human resources manager looked shocked. She glanced at Adrian before looking back at me. "Sir, Emma has never received a complaint." He didn't even turn toward her. "My decision is final, Jazz." She lowered her eyes. No one argued again. I signed the termination papers. My hand didn't shake. I thanked the HR manager for everything. She looked as though she wanted to say something. Instead, she quietly whispered, "I'm so sorry." I smiled. "It's okay," but it wasn't. Not because I had lost a job, Jazz. Because I had just watched my father's life's work fall into the hands of someone who didn't understand what made it valuable. Back at my desk, people avoided eye contact. A young intern began crying. "Jazz, I can't believe this," another employee whispered. "If Emma can be fired, none of us are safe." I packed my small box. The family photo was the last thing I picked up. Jazz. My father was smiling in the picture. It had been taken just months before he passed away. I gently brushed away a layer of dust. Then I remembered the final conversation we ever had. Jazz. He held my hand in the hospital. His voice was weak. "Promise me something." "I promise. No matter what happens, protect the people before you protect the business." At the time, Jazz, I thought he was simply giving fatherly advice. Years later, I realized he was preparing me for this exact moment. I walked toward the elevator. Just before the doors closed, Jazz. I looked back one last time. Employees stood silently. Some nodded, some wiped away tears. I smiled at them, not because I was happy, because I wanted them to know everything would be all right. Jazz. Even if they didn't believe it yet. Outside, rain had started falling. I stood on the front steps holding my cardboard box. The city around me continued as if nothing had happened. Cars passed. Jazz. People hurried home. Nobody knew that one decision inside that building would soon shake the entire company. A black luxury car slowly pulled up beside me. The window rolled down. Jazz. A familiar voice called my name. Emma. I froze. There was only one person in the world who still sounded exactly like that. My father's lawyer, Jazz. And the expression on his face told me he wasn't there by accident. The rain grew heavier as I stood on the steps outside Carter Global Industries. Employees hurried past me with umbrellas. Jazz. Too busy to notice the black luxury car waiting at the curb. But I noticed, because I had seen that car many times before. The driver stepped out first and quietly opened the back door. Jazz. Then I heard the same calm voice again. Emma, it's time. I looked inside. Sitting there was David Harrison, my father's lawyer. His hair had turned completely grey since the funeral. Jazz. But his warm smile hadn't changed. For a second, I forgot everything that had happened inside the building. I wasn't thinking about Adrian. I wasn't thinking about being fired. Jazz. All I could think about was my father. David looked at the cardboard box in my hands. So, it finally happened. I nodded. He fired me. David didn't look surprised. Instead, he slowly closed his eyes. Your father predicted this day almost 15 years ago. Those words stopped me cold. What do you mean? He opened the car door wider. Get in, Jazz. We have a long conversation ahead of us. The drive was silent. Rain tapped against the windows while the city disappeared behind us. David didn't rush to explain anything. Jazz. He simply waited until we reached a quiet old building on the edge of downtown. It wasn't a law office. It was my father's private office, a place no one had entered since the day he passed away. Jazz. When David unlocked the door, a familiar smell filled the room. Old books, fresh coffee, polished wood. For a moment, it felt as though my father had just stepped out and would return any second. Jazz. Nothing had changed. His desk remained exactly where he had left it. The old clock still hung on the wall. Even his favorite fountain pen rested beside a stack of notebooks. Jazz. I gently touched the edge of the desk. So many memories. David smiled softly. He wanted you to remember this room exactly as it was. I slowly walked toward the bookshelf. Jazz. On the top shelf sat a small wooden airplane. I picked it up. My father had carved it himself when I was 9 years old. Back then, every Friday evening, he came home early no matter how busy he was. Jazz. We would sit together in this office building, little wooden toys. He always said, a company can wait for one evening, but a daughter shouldn't. I laughed through my tears. He never missed a Friday. Jazz. David nodded. No, he also never missed believing in you. He reached into his briefcase and placed a thick brown envelope on the desk. Jazz. It had my name written across the front in my father's handwriting. Emma. My hands immediately began shaking. I've never seen this before. You weren't supposed to. Jazz. Your father instructed me to give it to you only after one condition was met. What condition? David looked directly into my eyes. Jazz. The day someone judged your worth without knowing who you truly were. I stared at him. He knew this would happen. He didn't know when, but he believed it would happen. Jazz. For several moments, I simply looked at the envelope. I didn't want to open it, because opening it meant accepting that my father had planned for a future without him. Finally, I broke the seal. Jazz. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper had yellowed slightly with age. I recognized every curve of his handwriting. My dear Emma, if you're reading this, Jazz. It means someone has mistaken kindness for weakness. Don't be angry with them. People who judge others by appearances often create their own downfall. Jazz. You were never meant to prove your value with expensive clothes or impressive titles. Your character is your greatest success. If today is the day you lost your job, remember something important, Jazz. You never lost your purpose. Tears blurred my vision. I stopped reading for a moment. David quietly handed me a tissue. I cried the first time I read it too. I continued. Gaz. Everything I built was never meant to belong to one businessman. It belongs to the people who gave their lives to this company, the workers, the families, the dream. I trusted you to protect that dream, Gaz. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with wisdom. Then I reached the final page, and everything changed. Inside the envelope was another document, a share certificate, then another, then another. Gaz. Dozens of them. David carefully spread them across the desk. You own 51% of Carter Global Industries. I couldn't breathe. What? You inherited them when your father died. I stared at the papers. No. I would have known. No, David replied gently. You legally inherited them, but the ownership was placed into a protected family trust. Yaz. The trust only becomes active when you decide to take control. My mind raced. So all these years you've been the majority owner, but no one knew. I slowly sat down. This can't be real, Gaz. David opened another folder. These are the legal records. Every document has been verified. You've attended shareholder meetings without anyone recognizing you. I looked confused. What, Gaz? He smiled. The trust voted through representatives. Your name never appeared publicly. Your father wanted you treated like every other employee, Gaz. I remembered countless meetings where executives discussed the anonymous family trust. Everyone wondered who controlled it. Nobody knew, including me. Why? I whispered. Gaz. Why would he hide something this important from me? David leaned back in his chair. Because your father feared something more dangerous than business failure. What? Power, he continued. Gaz. He believed money changes people. He wanted to know that if you ever led this company, you would understand the people working on every floor, the receptionist, the cleaner, Gaz, the warehouse staff, the customer service team. He wanted you to earn their respect before you inherited their responsibility. Suddenly, every strange decision my father had made finally made sense. Gaz. He insisted I start at the lowest position. He refused to give me special treatment. He even told managers never to reveal my identity. At the time I thought he didn't trust me. Now I realized, Gaz. He loved me enough to prepare me. David walked toward the window. Your father also left one final instruction. What is it? He smiled. You are never to use ownership as a weapon. I looked surprised. What do you mean? He knew one day someone might betray you, he said. If Emma ever seeks revenge, remind her that justice builds companies. Revenge destroys them. Gaz. Those words buzzed with me because deep inside, I wanted Adrian Blake to feel exactly what I had felt. Humiliation, embarrassment, regret. But my father wanted something different. He wanted justice. Gaz. David placed another folder in front of me. This contains every decision Adrian has made since becoming CEO. I opened it. The numbers were shocking. He had cancelled employee support programs. Gaz. Closed community projects, fired experienced staff, approved risky investments, ignored advice from senior managers. The company's profits looked good on paper. But underneath, Gaz, everything was beginning to crack. He doesn't realize it yet, David said. But he's weakening the foundation. I looked through another report. Gaz. Employee satisfaction had dropped to its lowest level in company history. Customers were leaving. Several long-term clients had already signed contracts with competitors. Gaz. Good people were resigning every week. The company wasn't growing. It was bleeding quietly. And Adrian couldn't see it because he only looked at quarterly reports, not at people. What happens now, Gaz? I asked. David smiled. That depends on you. You can activate the trust today. You can remove the board. You can dismiss Adrian immediately. It would all be completely legal. Jazz. I looked down at the documents, one signature. That was all it would take. After everything he had done, it seemed easy, too easy. I slowly closed the folder. No, David raised an eyebrow. No, Jazz. If I remove him today, he'll never understand why he failed. He'll blame bad luck. He'll blame the market. He'll blame everyone except himself. David's smile slowly returned. Jazz, you sound exactly like your father. I stood and looked out over the city. For 15 years I had protected this company as an employee. Now I finally understood. Jazz, I had been protecting my own family legacy all along. Adrian Blake believed he had fired an ordinary woman. He believed she would disappear quietly. He had no idea, Jazz. She was now watching every decision he made, and every mistake was bringing him one step closer to a truth that would leave the entire boardroom speechless. As David walked beside me and asked one final question. So Emma, when do you want to reclaim your company? I smiled for the first time that day. Not yet. I want him to believe he's won. Jazz. Because sometimes the greatest lesson isn't learned the day you make a mistake. It's learnt the day you realize you created your own downfall. The next 3 days felt strangely peaceful. Jazz. Not because my life had become easier, but because I had stopped fighting something that was already over. Every morning, I still woke up at 6. I still made coffee the same way. Jazz. I still reached for my office ID card before remembering I no longer work there. Old habits are difficult to leave behind. Instead of driving to Carter Global Industries, Jazz, I sat in my father's old office. His desk had become my workplace. David Harrison, my father's lawyer, visited every afternoon. Together, we quietly reviewed company reports. Jazz. The numbers told a story that most people couldn't see. Sales were still stable. Profits looked acceptable, but underneath those reports, the company was beginning to lose its heart. Jazz. Employees were leaving faster than they could be replaced. Several long-time clients had quietly ended their contracts. Jazz. Departments that once worked like a family now blamed one another for every mistake. Adrian believed everything was under control. He only looked at spreadsheets. He never looked into people's eyes. Jazz. My father used to say, a business doesn't fail because of one bad month. It fails because leaders stop listening. Now I finally understood what he meant. One afternoon, Jazz. David placed another file on the desk. You should read this. It was a report from Human Resources. The first page listed employees who had resigned during the last 2 months. Jazz. I recognized almost every name. Maria from customer service, Thomas from logistics, Ben from accounting. People who had spent years helping build the company. Jazz. Beside every resignation was almost the same reason. Workplace culture has changed. Leadership ignores employee concerns. No longer feels like the company I joined. I slowly closed the file. Jazz. They're not leaving because of money. David nodded. They're leaving because they've lost trust. Then another report arrived. This one came from the finance department. Jazz. Adrian had approved a massive expansion project overseas. The presentation looked impressive. New offices, luxury headquarters, expensive marketing campaigns. Everything sounded exciting. Jazz. But one detail caught my attention. The company planned to finance nearly all of it through borrowed money. I looked at David. This is risky. Very. What did the board say? They trusted Adrian. Jazz. And nobody questioned the numbers? David gave a small smile. One person did. Who? The chief financial officer. What happened? He resigned the next morning. Jazz. That answer stayed with me all evening. Someone with years of experience had walked away instead of supporting the plan. That wasn't normal. It meant he had seen something dangerous. Jazz. The next morning my phone rang. The caller ID surprised me. It was Michael Reed, our former chief financial officer. I answered immediately. Michael? Emma, can we meet? His voice sounded tired. Of course. We met at a quiet cafe across town. Michael looked older than I remembered. Only 2 weeks had passed since he resigned, yet the stress showed clearly on his face. I'm glad you came, he said. So am I. He looked around carefully before speaking. I heard what happened. You were fired. I smiled. News travels fast, he sighed. Emma, I wanted to stop it. I know, Jazz. He leaned forward. Adrian isn't a bad businessman. He just believes numbers are more important than people. I nodded. That's exactly his problem. Michael reached into his briefcase. Jazz. I brought something. He handed me a folder. Inside were financial projections, cash flow reports, risk assessments. Every page carried one message. If Adrian continued with his expansion plan, Jazz, the company would face serious financial pressure within months. He ignored all of this, I asked. Michael nodded. He called me old-fashioned. He said I lacked vision. So you resigned, Jazz. I couldn't put my signature on a decision I knew was wrong. I closed the folder. Thank you, he looked confused. For what? For protecting the company, even after leaving. As I drove home, Jazz, I kept thinking about my father's final letter. Protect the people before you protect the business. Maybe this wasn't about exposing Adrian, Jazz. Maybe it was about protecting everyone who depended on Carter Global Industries. Thousands of employees, thousands of families. I couldn't let pride destroy what generations had built. Jazz. That evening David called. The board has scheduled an emergency meeting. When? Friday morning. What's the agenda, officially? He smiled. Reviewing the expansion project. And unofficially, Jazz. They're beginning to worry. I looked out of the window. The moment was getting closer. Friday arrived. I stood in front of my wardrobe longer than usual. Not because I wanted expensive clothes, Jazz. Because I wanted confidence. Finally, I chose the same navy blue suit I had worn to my father's funeral. Style, elegant, respectful. I wasn't dressing to impress anyone. I was dressing to honor him, Jazz. Before leaving, I slipped his fountain pen into my handbag. It had never failed him. Perhaps today it would bring me strength too. When our car stopped outside company headquarters, Jazz, everything looked familiar. The same glass building, the same entrance, the same security guard. He recognized me immediately. Miss Carter? His face brightened. I heard what happened. I'm sorry, Jazz. I smiled warmly. It's good to see you again, James. He looked at the visitor list in surprise. You have a board invitation. I do. His eyebrows lifted. I didn't know. I simply smiled. Jazz. Neither did anyone else. He opened the door. Welcome back. Those 2 words carried more emotion than he realized. The boardroom was already full. Directors spoke quietly among themselves. Jazz. Adrian stood near the screen preparing his presentation. He looked completely confident. When I entered, conversation stopped. Several directors recognized me. One whispered, Jazz. Isn't that the employee Adrian fired? Another looked confused. Why is she here? Adrian turned around. The moment he saw me, his expression hardened. What are you doing here, Jazz? His voice echoed across the room. This meeting is for board members only. Before I could answer, David Harrison walked through the door carrying 2 leather folders. She belongs here. Adrian frowned. Jazz. I'm sorry. David calmly placed the folders on the table. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Harrison. I represent the Carter Family Trust. Jazz. Every director immediately straightened in their chairs. They all knew that name. For years, the mysterious Carter Family Trust had been the company's largest shareholder, Jazz. But none of them had ever met its representative, David continued. Today, I am here on behalf of its owner. The room became completely silent. Adrian folded his arms. And where is the owner, Jazz? David smiled, then he turned toward me. She is standing beside me. Every head in the room turned at once. No one spoke, no one moved. The silence lasted several long seconds. Adrian laughed nervously. Jazz. This isn't funny. David opened the first folder. It isn't intended to be. He placed certified legal documents on the table. Jazz. These papers confirm that Emma Carter inherited 51% of Carter Global Industries 15 years ago through the Carter Family Trust. One director quickly picked up the documents. Jazz. Another adjusted his glasses. A third compared the signatures. Finally, the chairman looked up. They're genuine. A wave of disbelief spread across the room. Adrian's confident smile disappeared. Jazz. He looked at me as though he had never seen me before. You, his voice barely came out. You own the company? I looked at him calmly. I always did. He slowly sank into his chair. I fired the owner. No, I replied quietly. You fired a loyal employee. And that's much worse. The room fell silent once again because everyone understood exactly what I meant. Jazz. The boardroom remained silent as every eye turned toward me. The chairman spoke first. Miss Carter, as the majority owner, the final decision is yours. I looked at Adrian. Just days ago, he had fired me without a second thought. Now the future of his career rested in my hands. For a moment I remembered the pain, the humiliation, Jazz, and the feeling of walking out of the building with a cardboard box. It would have been easy to take revenge. Then I remembered my father's words. Protect the people before you protect the business. Jazz. I took a deep breath. I'm not here to get even, I said. I'm here to protect the company and the people who built it. I turned to Adrian. You judged me by my clothes, my position, and my salary. Jazz. You never took the time to know who I was. But your biggest mistake wasn't firing the owner. It was failing to respect a loyal employee. Adrian lowered his head. I was wrong, he admitted quietly. Jazz. I thought success was about power. I forgot it was about people. The board voted unanimously to remove him as CEO. He accepted the decision without arguing and quietly left the head seat at the table. Jazz. The following Monday, I returned to Carter Global Industries as its new chairwoman. Instead of entering through a private entrance, I walked through the same front door I had used for 15 years. Jazz. I greeted the security guard, thanked the receptionist, and stopped to shake hands with employees who had once worked beside me. That afternoon, I gathered everyone in the main hall. Jazz. This company was never built by one person, I said. It was built by thousands of honest, hard-working people. From today, every employee will be treated with respect. Jazz. Because respect is the strongest foundation any business can have. The room filled with applause. Many employees smiled for the first time in months. Over the next year, experienced workers returned. Jazz. Trust was rebuilt, and the company became stronger than ever. Profits increased, but more importantly, people once again felt proud to work there. A few months later, Jazz. I received a handwritten letter from Adrian. Thank you for choosing justice instead of revenge. Losing my position taught me more than winning ever did. Jazz. I folded the letter and placed it inside my father's old desk. As I stood by my father's grave on the anniversary of his passing, I whispered, I kept my promise, I protected your people. Walking away, Jazz. I finally understood his greatest lesson. True leadership isn't about power or wealth. It's about treating every person with dignity. Jazz. Because you never know who they are, or how much they have quietly sacrificed. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating someone. It's proving that kindness, integrity, humility will always outlast pride. The end.